in divorce, custody, and family law issues, with offices in Nutley and Montclair, New Jersey. Today is October 30th, 2019. I am in New Jersey, as I mentioned. I'm doing my how-to video, which is a series I do every week. I try to give a little longer of an informational tip than I do on my daily tips, which is just a very short piece I give each day. Today's video is how to prove cohabitation and end alimony in New Jersey. So remember, if you're watching this on any other day or in any other state, you got to make sure that what I'm saying still applies or hasn't changed, or even if you're in a different state, make sure it applies in your state. Cohabitation is a very interesting and difficult topic. First, because the person who's paying alimony is usually very troubled by the fact they're paying alimony. And it's even worse if the person they're paying is involved with or cohabitating with another person. Some of the difficulties with cohabitation and the law in New Jersey, first, is it's very difficult to prove. Jersey requires essentially two main factors be established if you're proving cohabitation. First is that the two parties live together, or not even live together, but have come together in what's called a marriage-like relationship. And the case law in New Jersey says a marriage-like relationship is one where they share the typical duties and responsibilities of a marriage-like relationship. That's problematic in and of itself because law is very archaic and slow to change. The definition of marriage and marriage-like relationship and duties and responsibilities in a marriage have completely changed over the past 10 years, and the law hasn't caught up to it. Second, you have to prove that there is a financial impact from the cohabitation. So it's not just enough that they're in a marriage-like relationship and that they're living together or sharing their responsibilities, but there's got to be either a financial benefit from the person that they're sharing all this time with, or a financial detriment, meaning like an expense that's incurred by the fact that this other person is involved in their life. That's also very difficult because in order to prove financial aspects in the court, you have to look at bank statements, credit card bills, lifestyle expenses. The problem is when the cohabitation and alimony laws were originally created, life was very different. So currently, my experience with the work that I do, people don't really share expenses the same way that they used to 10, 20, 50, 100 years ago. You don't have people that get together and put their names onto each other's bank accounts. Many families today, they maintain separate finances. Then you have things like utility bills and internet and cable, which come in a bundle. A lot of times they were already in place before the other person moved in, so there's no changing of bills. People don't usually move in and put their name on a cable bill. They just leave it the way it was before they got together. So the basics that the court will look to are often very difficult to obtain. And lastly, on just the topic about cohabitation, the alimony reform, which I think was in 2014, made a substantial change to the cohabitation issue, and it now put that if you are successful in proving cohabitation and alimony is either modified or terminated, if the cohabitation should end, the support could possibly be reinstated, which means you've gone through all the trouble and time to get the proof, go to court, prove they're cohabitating, prove there's a benefit or burden, and your alimony was terminated or modified, then the person just turns around and says, well, then move out and let's reinstate the alimony. Along these lines, another problem is there hasn't been a significant amount of case law from 2014 up to this point on that specific issue. Not a lot of appeal issues because it takes many years to go through the appellate process. We haven't seen a lot of cases where they have terminated and reinstated alimony, but it is a possibility. The law is very unclear. So you're dealing with archaic law when it comes to proving issues and modern law that allows reinstatement. So it's a double issue you need to address when you're preparing for trying to prove cohabitation and ending your alimony. And the proof issues I'm going to talk about now, you need to obtain before you actually commence litigation, mostly except for the very last one I'll talk about. So the first way you want to try to get information to show that there's cohabitation is with a private investigator. And I usually recommend, not usually, I always recommend you use somebody who's licensed because you want to make sure that they obtain the proof properly and that they're independent. So the things, one, private investigators will often use a GPS device, which is very dangerous in many circumstances because there is case law that says if a spouse uses GPS or an intimate partner puts a GPS device in somebody's car or on somebody's person, that in and of itself could be an act of domestic violence leading to a restraining order. So if it's not done correctly, especially if it's done by you, if you do it wrong, you could end up with a restraining order, which would greatly impact your ability to resolve your alimony obligation and leave you with a more serious restraining order issue to face. So if you're going to have a private investigator, the case law usually suggests that the investigator's intent wasn't to harass like the spouse's intent might be, or to stalk, but actually to obtain information. So it's usually safer to use a private investigator, but you do want to check with him or her to make sure that he or she understands the law and the boundaries that are set within it. You can also use a private investigator for simple surveillance, like the old time school thought was sit out in your car and watch them come and go, follow them to work, see where they go on the weekends, take pictures of who's taking out the trash, and if they're going out to soccer games with the kids together. That's probably the best proof to get because it's very consistent, it'll be very thorough, and you'll have an independent witness, the investigator, to actually write a report and testify about it. Problem is, these days, it's very expensive to get that kind of surveillance. Although it is absolutely the best work to get, it's expensive, and because you need or you should have as much surveillance as possible, you want to do this for several months if you can. So most people can't afford to have somebody sitting outside of a house all day and night taking pictures throughout several months. So what I recommend when it comes to surveillance is that you get somebody to go periodically. Let them go on a Wednesday one week, and then a Saturday overnight another week, and then the following week have them go Wednesday and Thursday, and then go 2 weeks later on Friday afternoon, so that you have a different sample of days and overnights, weekends, holidays, so that you can put together sort of like a puzzle to suggest that even though you only have certain sporadic dates and times, that they, over the course of time, encompass a general lifestyle. You then want to supplement it with what's called a poll camera, and most private investigators can and should be able to do this. And that's simply, they attach a camera outside of the house, or it could be outside of the other person's house, the cohabitating spouse. It could be at a workplace, and it's just attached somewhere outside, across the street, and it just takes pictures all day long. And then the private investigator will take all the pictures, go through them, sort them, and be able to write a report as to what the pictures represent globally. So you don't have to give 4,000 pictures to the court, but you can give a 10-page report that says, okay, I have 400 pictures, and it shows that every morning at 8 o'clock, he or she leaves for work and then comes home at 5 o'clock, and then stays over and leaves the next morning. Or every weekend they come Friday night and they stay until Monday morning, and they're taking out the trash every Wednesday. So it summarizes and compiles a great deal of information that you would otherwise not be able to get without the expensive surveillance. There's other information you can use. Some private investigators will interview neighbors. They will go to maybe local stores and see if they can get information as to who comes in and who goes out, what time they spend together. I've had in certain cases they go to check cashing places locally to find out if they're cashing checks, so they might want to hide the contribution. Every PI is going to have their own technique and skills. You want to interview many so that you get an idea of who's going to be best suited for you. Next is you want to use your own investigation, but again, you got to be very careful because you don't want to do anything that's going to cross the line and being harassing or invasive or anything. But I usually recommend you start with social media. You'd be surprised how much information you can get on social media, and download it and print it or take screenshots because it's likely to disappear, and you don't want to have to go through a subpoena to get Facebook information because it's all preserved. Even when it's deleted, it's just very hard to obtain. So you want to obtain it, you want to get it. Unfortunately, if you think your children have some information, you want to try to get it from them, like off their cell phones. Don't involve them. But if they have Facebook accounts that you have access to, or their cell phones that you have access to because of the timer go off. You can also engage your partner, your ex-partner, in conversations, or their new partner, just kind of matter of fact, just to find out what's going on. Make a recording of the notes that you get, the ideas. You don't obviously ask them if they're living together, they're never going to tell you that, but you can ask them about holidays, or how they spent the holidays, or what their upcoming plans are, or if they're going away and they need backup to watch the children. You can also know when they're taking vacations and who's going, and you later know what to ask about, like who paid for the vacations, and get credit cards and hotel statements and things like that. You can always interview neighbors and friends and coworkers, just like I said, a private investigator would. Though usually a private investigator would be a little more smooth with it, but you certainly can. Again, you want to be discreet, not only for purposes of a restraining order, but just your personal reputation. You want to be able to preserve it too. But nothing wrong with asking a baseball coach who came to the last game, who's dropping off the kids. Nothing wrong with asking a teacher, who's picking up the children from school. These are things you should know anyway. Again, you can ask their ex-spouses. Many new partners that are cohabitating together have ex-spouses from previous relationships. You can ask them. They're usually very eager to give out information about their past. And then lastly, you can use what I call people searching tools. The internet's full of them. Reverse phone lookups. You can get known relatives and neighbors and relatives and companions, and they will often be grouped together by information that they share that you might not have access to. Like if they put their name on an electric bill, like I said earlier, often they don't, but if there is an electric bill or a new utility that started, a lot of times these people searching tools will gather this information and put it as like a known associate because they have an address in common. You can also send letters requesting DMV updates. That's usually more difficult. That goes more into the last issue that I was going to talk about, which I guess I'll jump into it after people searching tools, is getting certain discovery. Now, the problem here is that most of the information that you need, like credit card statements, bank statements, utility bills, you have to get through subpoena. And you can't subpoena information unless you have litigation that's ongoing. Paying alimony, usually you don't have ongoing litigation. The tool that you would have to use would be what's called a motion for post-judgment discovery, which means you're going to a court saying that you have this issue, that you need the ability to obtain documents and proofs, but because you don't have ongoing litigation, you don't have subpoena power. It's not a good tool at all because obviously you're alerting the other party to the fact that you're investigating them for cohabitation, and you don't want to do that if you don't need to, because then they'll just stop cohabitating or go covert as much as they can. But it is a tool available if you have either no other choice, it works, or if you've compiled all the other information I told you and you still want to get some more before jumping into court on a cohabitation case, then file a motion for post-judgment discovery. So that's most of the information I have. Like I said, it's a very difficult topic. This information doesn't guarantee that you're going to be successful, obviously, and even if you are successful, like I said, they can come right back and try to reinstate it, which is a horrible aspect that I hope one day they change, but it is the current status of the law. So I hope this information helps you. If it does, please give a like and share this video so that others get to see it. You can also subscribe to whatever platform you're watching so they get notices when I go online, and feel free to leave any comments or questions on whatever platform excuse me, that you're watching from. I do my best to answer them, not always immediately, but I will always get to them and respond. I also take tips for future information that you would like me to cover. So with that, I thank you for tuning in. I hope the information helps you, and I'm going to sign off. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be on tomorrow, the 31st, but if I am, no, I probably won't be actually. So I'll see you most likely on Friday.